Today's episode is part one of a special two-part episode with Matt Martingale of the Elias Sports Bureau. We had a fun, nostalgic conversation about the 1980s New York Mets that will drop next week. But today's show will feature our regular Beat the Shift in-season format. We'll talk about the power of spring training stats, rank players at catcher and in the outfield with our Who'd You Rathers. Plus, we'll have our regular waiver wire, pitcher preview, and injury update sections. Part 1 with Matt Martingale of the Elias Sports Bureau coming up next on Beat the Shift. And welcome to another episode of the Beat the Shift podcast. I am your host, Ariel Cohen, and with me, as always, is Ruvain Guy. How are you, Ruvain?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. We're going to have a lot of fun on this episode. We're going to talk some Mets. We're going to do a bunch of Who You Rathers for the hitters. We're going to talk about so much stuff. I really looking forward to this. We've got a great guy. Oh, let's bring him on right away. It's Matt Martingale of Elias Sports Bureau. What's going on, Matt? How are you?
Hey, Ariel and Ruvain, how you guys doing?
Oh, we're doing fantastic. Well, we have to actually open up the show. We just completed a trade in an expert league. You wanna run through it?
Yeah, well, Ariel reached out to me, and we ended up trading. I gave Ariel Josh Bell and Tommy Pham, and he gave me Harrison Bader and
Ryan O'Hearn.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I should remember that. That wasn't that long ago. Yeah. So Ariel is doing better than I am in this league for sure. I'm not. I don't hate my team, but it's really not. That's not really. If you looked at the standings, you might think that I do, but I think I don't think I really have a realistic chance of winning. I'm currently I think in 10th place, and Ariel's a few spots ahead of that. But I think this is something that probably
more than a few spots ahead of that. We're almost in second.
Okay, no, apologies. So Ariel suggested that some more stolen bases would help my team, which was true. The only problem was the positional needs slots didn't quite fit because he was asking me to give up Josh Bell, and then I didn't really have a great corner guy to slot in. I had Andrew Vaughn, who I would use in an emergency, but he's not somebody that I prefer not to use too many White Sox players on my lineup. So that's why we expanded it a little bit, and we worked it out to a 4-player deal. And
yeah. Actually, Ruvain is the one who I was talking we were looking at over the team, and he's like, we could use Josh Bell right now, who's, raking, and, an upgrade for Ryan O'Hearn. And we've got a couple of outfielders coming back. So, and categorically, we don't really need the steals, but we need the power. So we have an outfielder to spare. We need the power. Josh Bell's on a roll. Just made sense. And made sense for you. We looked and said, you know what? You need steals. The right guy to offer is Bader. That's how trade should work, folks. You just look at the needs of the other guy. You look what you need. See if you're a good trading partner. And you offered it, and it was very cordial. I asked for that. You said, all right, can you give me a corner in return? No problem. Here's O'Hearn. You throw me back somebody. All right, Pham, no problem. And that's it. So kudos to you, Matt. I think it's going to help both of our teams.
I actually think the way it started was I said, who has Josh Bell and why aren't we making a trade for him? Because he actually fits our team perfectly. We were looking for power. We wanted to get rid of some steals, and we had the perfect, the trade mate. And it just worked out perfectly because we were each looking for certain aspects of categories that we needed, and it just happened to fit. So I think that's what you do when you look for trades. I mean, it's a little late in the season already, and I mean, a lot of leagues are done trading right now, but in the future, that's really what you should be looking for.
Yeah, I really appreciated, you guys were, I guess you guys were managing this team together. I'm not sure, but I appreciated the initial very fair offer, and I'm never, I don't like it when somebody offers me a lopsided deal, and then I have to talk them down from it. And most of the time, if somebody offers me something ridiculous, I'm just going to say no thanks and walk away. So that's obviously in an experts league. I think probably people are more sensitive and responsible. And you're probably not going to offer some ridiculous $30 player for two $5 players in this league. But it's always there are other leagues where I'm in where I get that kind of offer all the time. So it's nice to get.
We're a bunch of professionals. We're a bunch of experts. We we went right to the point. There was just a little bit of talk to get it done, and good. And this wasn't a blockbuster. We're talking about $5 to $10 guys. Just to marginally increase the value of the team categorically. If you're picking a guy up the waiver wire to do it, we saw that we didn't really have that available, and from your team it made sense. We had an extra player that we would have benched next week anyways when our outfielders come back, and there you go. So you work for Elias Sports Bureau. Every time you watch a game, according to the Elias Sports Bureau, this has never happened. What do you do at Elias, and what does Elias do? Maybe you can tell the audience here.
Yeah, well, I mean, I assume that probably a good portion of your audience is at least vaguely familiar with us, but we've been around over 100 years. Like, we are by far the oldest company of this type. We are the official statisticians of Major League Baseball, the NFL, and the NBA, plus also the WNBA and Major League Soccer, and I'm probably missing a few. But yeah, I mean, we work closely with the leagues. It's the I think our biggest strength is like our experience. Like I've been working at Elias since almost 30 years, or 29 and a half years almost. And like, I'm not even close to like the longest tenure person there. There's so many people who have been there so long, and there's so much shared experience. And I think that's probably our biggest strength as a company. And I started working there when I was actually a couple weeks before I graduated from college, and so this is the only quote unquote real job I've ever had. So I have to consider myself really lucky in that regard. And
Wow.
not many people. Not many people get to do the thing that they kind of grew up dreaming. I wouldn't say that I grew up specifically dreaming of working at Elias, but I wanted to do something in sports, and when this opportunity presented itself, it was just perfect.
Well, that's incredible. Absolutely. By the way, is there any connection to fantasy sports or at all?
Not really. Unfortunately, we had some previous management was not really a big fan of this fantasy sports. We've been trying to, I'm kind of a one-man operation now as from the company in terms of fantasy baseball, at least, and I've done a few blogs, and I have a Substack page, which I have not updated much this year, unfortunately, but, and I've given a few talks at the First Pitch Florida, put on by Baseball HQ. I did one in 2020, and I did one this year. So I'm always hoping to expand. We're always hoping to expand. I have to wait to see for the right opportunity is. Right now, we're not heavily involved in fantasy itself, although we are the statistical provider to if you use CBS for your fantasy league provider, they get our stuff from us.
CBS, one of my favorites. I love how CBS does the scoreboard. Like, that's my favorite one to watch. And when you see the scores and stats trickle in, there's nothing better than CBS. I'd say maybe there's some others for managing the team that are better, but the scoreboard, CBS beats. So, I got to ask you a question here. What do you think of ATC? Because you're the Elias Sports Bureau. That's the Sports Bureau. I mean,
yeah.
How does ATC stack in terms of projections and stats? I mean, is it ranked number one for you?
Well, for me it is. I have never quite gone through the full effort of trying to do my own full projections, and basically the reason that I haven't is because I know that there's so much good stuff out there. But led by you guys, ATC is the best. I was right before we started recording. I was telling Ariel that like my own projections that I use I just kind of describe them as like a stew, where the ATC projections are probably the biggest ingredient. They're certainly not the only thing. I have a lot of things that I, a lot of my own numbers that I add in some of the stuff that we'll talk about in a little while, adjustments. But, you guys are just, I started, I don't think, honestly, I don't think I'd ever even heard of you until I think the first time I went to First Pitch Arizona was in 2019, and I saw you. I think you both spoke at this one, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
Yeah, and I remember like you were describing your system about how you um, I guess aggregate is the right word to
Aggregate, yeah.
other projection systems and see what some people are better at projecting than others, and take this emphasize these strong parts of a particular system's numbers, and that was. I feel like I have had like a couple of like turning points in my fantasy baseball playing career. Like sometimes I think back at like I've been playing this game for like since 1996, but I'm so much better a player now than I was then. And like a couple of things, like one of the big things was actually finding out about Baseball HQ and finding their website. That
Sure.
was and then. I think once I saw them, and then I think I bought their book on how to value, how to turn sats into a numerical
McGee?
value. Art McGee, right?
Art
That's the
McGee,
guy.
yeah.
Yeah, that was a really good. I had been using a different method, which had been leading me astray quite a bit. I'd been using a John Benson method from years earlier, which always tended to, and I always ended up with teams with not enough power at using that. I guess that was probably I don't remember was it PVM method? Is that
PVM?
yeah.
Yeah.
It was always I was always too much batting average.
I'm a Z-score guy.
You're right, and
Z-score
not
is,
enough power. So yeah, so like that, but I've kind of gradually learned, and then I think the next big step that I took was when I found ATC, and then like shortly thereafter I started doing my own. I kind of actually started doing it as an excuse so I could do a presentation for First Pitch Fire.
There
But
you
I started looking at spring training stats, and which are really much maligned in the community fantasy industry.
Yeah, so we
I
wanted
think.
to talk just a small strategy section today, but we were talking earlier this week about that you do see some predictive value of spring training stats, and as a drafter and as a fantasy player, there could be a good way to incorporate them. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I basically I compare what the player does and what a player does. I'm going to mostly focus on batters now. I've done some work with pitchers too, with less, a little bit more mixed results. So I'll focus on the batters. I look at how they did during spring training and compare it to what their numbers were the previous regular season. So, players who's hit for a much higher batting average in spring training do tend to carry that over to the next season. A very rough guide for it is for every 10 points of increase in spring training batting from the previous season, that roughly translates into a 1 point increase that regular season.
Interesting.
So if somebody's hitting 150 points higher in spring training than they did the previous year, there are other factors involved, but like the very basics of it is that I more or less will bump my projections by 15.
And does it go the other way? If
it does, yes,
it does. Okay.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
a straight line.
It's I'm actually it's interesting you say that. It's probably even more. I think it's more important actually to pay attention to who's doing really badly than who's doing really well. Because somebody
If you can't have spring training players, if you can't have AAA players pitching in spring training,
Right.
then you can't really hit major league pitching.
Right, and there's always going to be outliers. Like so this year, one of the players who had the worst spring trainings according to my numbers was Francisco Lindor, who's obviously he got it, and he actually carried it for the first 10 days of the season. He was looking like that was going to continue, but he turned it around in a big time. He's been great for the last few months.
He's been a notorious slow starter when it comes for seasons. Even the first season he signed the big contract, he started very slow, but he
Yeah.
accumulated numbers. I think is he still on pace for a 30-30 season this year? I think he is.
Yeah, I think he's probably paced to blow past that.
Yeah,
I
what
think.
probably breaks that, Matt, is there are certain players who purposely start slow, so then it's not really statistically accurate. I can say like on the pitching side that velocity is an indicator. If you see someone with an increased velocity, that's a good indicator for the regular season, and vice versa if their velocity's down. Other than if you're Zach Greinke, who we know always starts slow, that kind of thing. Even Chris Bassett. Chris Bassett has always started slow, and his first month is terrible, slow starter. So I think you got to throw those selections out, and I guess Lindor would classify as one of those to throw out.
Yeah, I think my next step. This is not something that I've researched yet, but I think I'm probably going to do this for next year. Like, in addition to comparing how the player, in addition to comparing his spring training stats to the previous regular season, I'm also going to do something to compare it to the previous spring training. 'Kay, I know I don't have I don't have any concrete examples to give you, but I know that there are players who take spring training a lot more seriously than others. So like if some, and if not everybody, I think there's probably a wide variance in how seriously any particular player, takes any particular at bat in spring training. Whether is it something that they really trying to, are they really trying to get a hit here, or are they just trying to work out their a new batting stance or something like that.
So what I use is not much from spring training. I don't really generate a lot from it. I haven't really found the correlation. I'm glad you did. The couple things I look at, is strikeouts, aside velocity, strikeouts for pitchers. If you see a big increase in strikeouts, that is to me, and stolen base attempts. I don't look at actual success rate. I look and see who's stealing more, who's actually running, and it's actually more of it on a team basis. I look at which teams are running more. Those are the nuggets I get. Ruvain, do you get any nuggets from spring training that you use?
Yeah, again, the tendency of the managers, how they're going to set the lineup. Sometimes you don't see until the end, toward the end of spring training, but you'll see how managers want to set the lineup, where certain players are going to bat. Like if the Mets would have batted, let's say Francisco Lindor first to start the season, he may have had a completely different season. You never even know. But lineups are very important. Bullpen usage, how they're planning on using the bullpen. You don't really see that too much, but usually in the spring training, like in the fourth or fifth inning, that's when they put in the closer or the setup man or whatever, because they want to get their innings in really early. So take a look at when the managers use it, then that type of thing. I look for the usage. The usage in spring training is very important because you'll see how they're going to be used early in the season to get the most playing time out of them.
I agree with the yeah. I didn't get. I know we want to move on, but the most useful thing I think that you can get from spring training actually is what Ruven just said, which is the managerial spring stolen base tendencies. Like those are very sticky. Like they carry over far more than you would expect them to. And I actually discovered a few more like corollaries to that, which is that teams with new managers tend to run more, both in spring training and the regular season. So if you just all else being equal, knowing nothing else, if you know a team has a new manager this year, they're likely to steal more bases.
Absolutely. So the White Sox this year will steal more bases. Is that it?
Uh, well, yeah, I haven't done anything with mid-season changes, so they didn't have a new manager at the start of the year, so.
No, I'm saying the coming year. So
next year, yeah. I mean, they got to try something, right?
They got rid of. I mean, what a dumpster fire the White Sox are. It's just. And how did the Yankees give up double-digit runs to them? What? I mean, wow, that was a horrific game this week.
Yep.
All right, so I do want to move on to, we're going to do a bunch of Who'd You Rathers, and then we'll talk Mets, which is going to be fun. But last week we did the infield. We did a couple of Who'd You Rathers, a couple players, and hey, what do you think? Who's going to be high? Who's going to be low? Let's do the catcher position. It's not a very fantastic position, but there's a bunch of guys at the top that I'm interested in your take. Not that there's any advice to do in fantasy. Basically, everyone's going to own these guys. But I'm interested in who you like better, if any. And we're talking about the Contreras brothers, William Contreras, Wilson Contreras, Salvador Perez, and Will Smith. I'm actually asking this question not because there's any use in fantasy for these particular players, but I think that the strategy of why you come up with these decisions and what about them, and maybe they're getting more playing time, less playing time, streaky, I think it's helpful for owners to hear the thought process and maybe make judgments on some other players. So in a way, this is a strategy talk, but I'd like to hear it. So we'll let you go first, Matt. Who would you like the most? Who would you like the least out of Will Smith, Salvador Perez, and the Contreras brothers?
So I'm going to go with. I suspect this is not going to be a controversial pick, but I'm going to go with William Contreras here. He was the highest rated. He was. I went back today and looked at my preseason rankings, which I don't really typically do all that much during the season, but I just wanted to get a bit of frame of references to how, what did I think of them a few months ago, and has anything changed? And with William Contreras, he's been pretty much. There's really not anything negative that I can see in his profile. I know he went through a little bit of a slump, but one thing that's very important, especially when it comes to catchers, is playing time. And I looked it up. Coming into today, William Contreras had 31 more plate appearances than any other catcher-eligible player this year, and so he's playing all the time. When he doesn't, he had he actually a remarkably long consecutive games played streak at the start of the season. He was doing quite a bit of DHing. So, but when he's not catching, he's usually in the lineup at DH, which is a good thing. And he's hitting just as well as anybody could have reasonably expected. And I had him. I remember at the beginning of the year there were a few takes out there online. I saw that some people were saying that Wilson Contreras was better than William, and I sort of get it. Wilson has a longer track record, but William is younger and was more productive last year and has remained so this year. Although Wilson has actually done quite well since returning from the IL. He might be, I have to say, I don't. Will Smith is somebody who I had rated quite high at the beginning of the year. He's just been in such a slump lately. In April everybody who picked him was feeling really good about themselves, but he just really has not hit at all. I try not to do too much timing of slumps, but it's you can't help but notice that his numbers are just not up to what the other guys are doing. Salvador Perez is somebody who I like too. I certainly would have no objection to having him on any team. He's on my I am in one main NFBC main event team, which is not doing great, but Salvador Perez was one of my best picks in that league. He's been fantastic. But yeah, Will Smith, he's certainly young and talented enough that he could turn it around, but I'd rather go with the player who's producing now and playing more than everybody else.
Ruvain, you agree, disagree?
I agree. I think William Contreras is a top fantasy baseball catcher this year, and he usually has a better second half than first. But I'm actually going to go with Sal Perez here. He's hit better right now. There's some interesting facts about him. He's hit better this year as a catcher or as a first baseman as compared to a DH. He's hit for a higher average and more power when he's actually playing the field as opposed to DH, and he's doing that most of the time. And he's statistically been better in the second half of the season every single year since 2018. 2018 was the last time his first half was better than his second half. Plus, he's in a better lineup than William Contreras. So that's why I like Sal Perez a little bit better than William Contreras. Wilson Contreras, his average is so far down since the All-Star break. It's not, but his power is still there. I don't love him so much. And Will Smith, he's usually a better first half player than a second half player, and he's 11 for his last 70. That's not great. He's starting to lose some playing time. They're sitting him some more. I mean, the lineup will get deeper. I mean, the Dodgers are getting a lot of injured players back. A lot of players they traded for, they're starting to come back. So he's going to be in a better lineup. He's not going to have as much pressure on him. But I still think the order for me is probably going to be Sal Perez, William Contreras, Wilson Contreras, and then Will Smith.
Ruvain, I have the exact order as you. William is excellent. I can't say anything bad about him. I prefer Salvador Perez. I mean, you mentioned William Contreras because of the playing time. Salvador Perez plays every game. He plays both first base and catcher, and he bats in the middle of the lineup, better lineup. He's got 79 RBI. That's 10 more than William. He's got 22 home runs. That's 7 more than William. Salvador Perez is a monster in the second half. The Royals are very relevant. William Contreras, I guess they'll be relevant most of the time. Will Smith is going to be less relevant because the Dodgers are going to lock it up a playoff spot sooner than you think, and he's been bad. You mentioned that people liked Wilson over William started the season. I don't know about that. I think ATC had William ranked as the number one. Wilson was somewhere down there. I think that Wilson Contreras was the better priced value preseason, but below his brother William, who has clearly taken the head of there. By the way, all these guys homered the other night. Like they're all really good players.
Salvador Perez is amazing. I mean, he's only. It seems like he should be much older than he is. He's been around so long, and it's like 3 or 4 times a year. It seems like he suffers an injury that would keep most catchers out for a week, and he's playing the next day. He's really tough.
Is he a Hall of Fame catcher?
I was about to ask that, Ruvain. I was about to say the same thing.
I mean, he's got the World Series ring already. I mean, he's been the best catcher in baseball for numerous years already. I mean, he's got the Gold Gloves. He's got the All-Star nods. I mean, what else? What is he missing from his resume?
I haven't done a full deep dive, but I'm inclined to agree with you.
Is Pudge in the Hall of Fame?
Yes, he is.
Well, Pudge
Yes.
is in the Hall of Fame.
Pudge was a much better defensive catcher, I think.
Absolutely, but no slouch for Salvador Perez. But Salvador Perez is a better hitter than Pudge.
Yeah, yes, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think he's probably not quite up to Pudge's level overall. And Pudge was a really good hitter too. He was in the majors like also when he was super young, and the first couple of years was not a fantastic hitter, but eventually grew into it. And I think that's Perez is he's young enough that he could maybe reach those heights, but I think I would probably vote for him, considering, obviously we're all Mets fans here. We remember him leading the Royals to the World Series, and
we don't remember that year, by the way.
Oh yeah, okay.
I'm sorry. We remember most of the year. We just don't remember that last October week.
I remember 2014 and 2016. 2015 is a blur.
Yeah.
Actually, 2015 was an amazing year. I had a wonderful time. It's a shame we didn't win. It was as soon as Familia gave up that home run with one out in the ninth in that game one, that was the end. We needed to win that game.
For me, it was Daniel Murphy's defense at second base.
Net negative.
Yeah.
By the way, speaking of Hall of Fame, since it's up, is Joey Votto a Hall of Famer?
I think so. Yeah, I would say I'm actually kind of surprised that he's still playing in the Blue Jays system, right?
Yes, he's rehabbing right now. He's still in the Blue Jays system. He's still trying to come back and play for this year. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say he's probably. I think again, like I haven't done a full deep dive on these. I'm a member of the BBWA. I don't have a ballot yet. I haven't been in long enough, but in about 5 years I will be able to vote on the Hall of Fame. So somebody like Votto might be one of the first players who comes up.
Amazing.
So I got a few years to think about him.
And you'll remember this podcast when you vote, right?
Yeah.
Let's do outfielders. We're gonna throw Jazz Chisholm in there. Although Jazz Chisholm was injured, so we're just going to throw him out. And you can talk about him if you want, as a theoretical question. But Jarren Duran, Corbin Carroll, and Luis Robert, who says he was close to quitting baseball this year. I don't know if that's actually true, but I think anybody in the White Sox felt really bad this year. But Duran, Carroll, Robert, if you want to throw Chisholm just for intellectual purposes, you're welcome to. Matt?
Yeah, so this was a tough one. I think it would have been Jazz Chisholm before his injury, but it's not. It doesn't look too promising. I think they said today he might only be out for a few weeks, but at this point of the year, a few weeks is a pretty big chunk of the year. Corbin Carroll is I had rated quite a bit ahead of the other three coming into the season, and I think probably his average draft position would reflect that. But he's just something just doesn't seem right with him this year. I don't know. He's hitting pretty well in August. He was slugging .587 in August coming into today, which is obviously very good. But he only stole one base, and he's really not. Even if he seems to have kind of gotten back to form as just from pure hitting, but now he's not running. I don't know. Something never doesn't seem quite right with him. I'm pretty sure actually it was against the Mets last year where he took a swing and it looked like he separated his shoulder or something.
Yeah, it was.
And it seems like he's never been quite the same since. And that wouldn't necessarily affect his space running. I'm not sure what the deal is with that. But I didn't end up with Corbin Carroll on any teams. It wasn't for lack of trying. He might turn it around, but
the draft price was so high, and given the shoulder previous injury, it was just a red flag to just too high a price. He's going third, fourth overall.
He was in the top 5 in most leagues, I think. Yeah.
He was a definite do not draft, and you see that happened. 219 batting average this year. His 21 stolen bases, 11 homers. That definitely does not justify his draft value.
Yeah, and then Luis Robert is kind of an avoid for me for a different reason, kind of what you just alluded to. He just, that White Sox team just seems like a fountain of negativity, for no lack of a better term. There's some play. And the fact that Robert himself has spoken about wanting to retire or anything like that, it's just I have a hard time seeing him turning.
So Luis Robert, by the way, he's also he was injured this year. He only has 267 at bats. I said Corbin Carroll has 11 homers. Does Luis Robert have more or less homers than Corbin Carroll this year? And remember, he only played half a season.
I would say he. I think. Well, I think he
say
has
less.
12. I think he has
He has
12.
12. Yeah,
Okay.
that's right. You got it, Mr. Numbers Guy. Boy, I'm going to lose the trivia to you today.
I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't looked him up earlier.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'm not really particularly interested in, I think Luis Robert is the kind of guy, if he gets traded in the offseason and ends up on a good team, could be a huge comeback guy for next year.
Rest
But
of
for
the year, though, just
rest of the year, I'm
forget
not
it.
really that interested. So that kind of leaves Jaron Duran. And Jaron Duran has had kind of a tough week for non-baseball reasons, and I don't want to say that I certainly don't want to advocate everything that when it comes with him.
Do you
but
see the shirt that he wore the next day?
Yes, I did.
If you haven't seen it, check out what he wore the next day.
Yeah, he didn't seem very sorry about it. But putting all that aside, I know different people have different feelings about whether you have somebody who you don't really respect necessarily as a person on their team. But he's been really good this year. And my first thought when I looked at his number this year, well, maybe it's a little fluky, but his slash line, batting average, on base slugging is very, very similar to what he did last year. Not quite as amount. He didn't play quite as much last year, but there's nothing about this that really seems fluky to me. So
No, not at all.
he seems good. I would expect him to be very productive.
I mean, he's
for the rest
batting
of the year.
291, so his BABIP right now this year is 358. His major league average to date 327. So he's going to have an increased BABIP. So I don't know, maybe you could say he's not a 290 hitter, maybe he's a 280 hitter, 275 at the worst. But he's been doing this 2 years straight. So the guy's legit. He steals bases. This is not an absurd number of home runs. I mean, any regression to me is soft. This guy is a legit $25 player.
But I'm actually going to go with Corbin Carroll here. I know
Really?
you're singing the platitudes of Jaron Duran, but I mean, we know what you're getting with him. I think Corbin Carroll, having the All-Star break and having some rest may have actually helped him a lot. He has more home runs in the last 22 games, which was 6, compared to the first 93 games, which is 5, obviously, because he has a total 11, as you mentioned. And Eric Cross actually posted this on Twitter today. In his last 106 at-bats, he's slashing 258, 359, 640, with 26 runs, 8 homers, 3 stolen bases, a walk rate of 12%, and a K rate of close to 18%, which is not that bad. It's coming a little bit back to where he normally is. And plus, the Diamondbacks are a hot team right now. They seem like they're winning almost every single day. That lineup is a little bit deeper, especially when Christian Walker comes back. That lineup is going to be very deep. And I think there's just a little bit less pressure on him. I'm sure he was pressing a little bit coming off of the World Series and wanting to repeat, but you can't repeat an entire year in the first half of the season. You have to. It's a long season. You have to go through it, and I think he's going to be better. Luis Robert, I mean, I don't think you could even start him at this point.
We have him in labor, 12 team. I mean, that's a bench. I don't know if it's a drop, but it's a bench.
He's 3 for his last 39. He's not really playing hard. If you saw that play where I think it was Oswald Peraza scored from second on a fly ball, it was he came running in from center field. It didn't even look like he was trying to go near the ball. It didn't look like he was really trying, and I don't think he has the motivation right now to do well. So do you want someone starting your team down the stretch who doesn't have a motivation to do well? I think you're better off keep him on your bench, or I think you can even drop him. If you drop him, I think you get more productivity off the bench. Off the fab, you get a guy who's hot and play them instead. That may be a better option at this point. And plus, a better lineup.
Depends on the format. In a 15-team league, you're not dropping Luis Robert. 10-team, you probably should. 12-team, bench him, borderline, that kind of thing. I'll say this. So Jaron Duran is legit, again, with soft regression. Corbin Carroll is more upside than Duran. So I would say as follows. If you're in first place and you're looking for productivity, I would choose Duran over Carroll. I think the floor is higher for the rest of the year, only because he's been doing it all year. He's got fire in his eyes. The whole cursing thing just shows he's got fire in his eyes, which we like for players. Corbin Carroll, I don't know. Maybe he's turning around, maybe not. Is he still injured? I don't know. But if you're shooting for upside, if you're down in 10th place and you need to make a pit, and who the heck knows, I would go Corbin Carroll here. According to ATC projections, rest of season, Duran $24, Carroll $23. They actually have Robert at 21. That seems a little high to me.
No. Yeah.
I don't believe that. I would probably say closer to like $10.
Yes.
But all right. That is that. Let's move on to another outfield group. Anthony Santander, what a year. Kyle Schwarber, Teoscar Hernandez, And we're going to throw in Adolis Garcia, who has had great spurts in the past and might even be the best guy for the Roto, maybe the best guy because he steals. What say you? Let's start with Ruvain first. Santander, Schwarber, Teoscar, and Adolis Garcia rest of season.
Okay, I'm not going to take the obvious one here. I think the answer to this is going to be Kyle Schwarber. He's a second half player. He hits so many home runs. He's hit 11 home runs since he came off the IL on July 9th. He's in that lineup. He's batting leadoff. He's scoring a ton of runs. He gets on base. If you need runs and RBIs and home runs, his average is not killing you. He's batting around 260 for the last month or so. So I think all that combined, yes, Anthony Santander he has 36 home runs. 30 of them have been to the pull side, 21 away, 15 at home. It's you know what you're getting with Anthony Santander. He's made that next step. I see why people want him from here on out. Teoscar Hernandez, no home run derby jinx. He's hitting for more power and average since the home run derby. And the lineup is getting deeper. He's getting more RBI chances. And Adolis Garcia has the same home run to fly ball rate that he had back in 2022 when he hit 27 home runs, and he has 19. So he's almost on pace to duplicate what he did in 2022. His average has been better of late, but still, of these four players, I like Kyle Schwarber first, then Anthony Santander, then Teoscar, and then Adolis.
All right, Matt, what say you?
Yeah, these are all pretty close. I had a tough time picking one out of this group. I'm reluctantly going to go with Teoscar Hernandez here, I think, and I also, it's always the whole thing that you just referred to about the home run derby winning jinx. I think I don't know if this is going to I don't know if that's going to forever put that myth to bed or not, but it's been severely overplayed in the past. I think there's just been a couple of guys who were playing over their heads in the beginning of the year and just happened to win it, and we're due for regression anyway. That's what's happened. But Teoscar Hernandez is he's a solid all-around player. He's I would say he's probably the best rounded of these four players. He hits most likely to hit for the best average. I would have no trouble having it. Adolis Garcia I have on the labor team that I'm in the league that I'm in with you, and he's you're right. His power numbers are fairly close to what they've been in the past, and he has turned it around lately. So I'm hoping I'd love for him to have the best finish to the season. I'm a little concerned about him. His strikeout rate has just always been so bad, and sometimes with those guys, it just they get away with it for a while until they stop getting away with it. So I'm hopeful. I'm not saying he's done, but he's got a couple of red flags for me. And the other two, I have this, I have absolutely no issue with either Santander or Schwarber. They're both really good power hitters. Santander since June 1st has 27 homers in 65 games, which is pretty crazy. And Schwarber, he's I went into this year. I remember he had one of the lowest projected batting averages of any draftable player in my preseason rankings, and he's done quite a bit better this year. I think he's hitting over 250, which doesn't sound great, but I was expecting quite a bit lower than that. I always find it funny, not really necessarily a fantasy angle, but Kyle Schwarber is like the exact opposite of the prototype of the leadoff hitter, right? What you would have expected, 30, 40 years ago. Yeah. He walks a lot, but he doesn't. He's slow. He's big. This is just going back to my days as a kid. The leadoff hitter was always the fastest guy on the team, and I know that's changed for good reasons. I'm not saying that's wrong, but it still seems a little weird to me that he bats first. I'm not,
unnerving.
Yeah, he's fine at it, but I don't know. I haven't done a deep dive into the Phillies lineup, but it seems to me like they probably could move him down a little bit, maybe put Trey Turner first, or I don't know.
Yeah, I'd probably put Turner first if I'm in there. For me, I'd say Adolis Garcia is at the bottom. He's the lowest projected value, lowest earned value to date. He's batting only .218. In a pinch, he can be good, but let's put him last. The other three I struggled with. They were very close. I'm going to go with Santander as the number one. I think we all have a different player here, believe it or not. Santander has been the best to date, period, and the highest projected value. He's a beast this year. And by the way, the .243 batting average, which is not fantastic, that comes with a .226 BABIP. So he's fairly unlucky, and his strikeout rate is 19%. The guy makes contact. I think the batting average is going to improve. Barrel rate, 12%. This has been a steady increase in his career. I'm looking at just other metrics, see if he's lucky or not. Homer to fly ball rate is 18%, which is a tad lucky, but not ridiculous. 15% would be an average one. The big change this year is his fly ball rate is 58%, where his career is 49%. But that could be an intended change. And last year, last couple years, 28 homers, 33 homers. So I don't think he's a 40-homer guy, which is where he's probably going to end up, but 35 homer pace. Like I think it's soft regression for him here on out. He's legit, consistent, tons of power. He hits in the heart of the lineup. I mean, the 80 RBI so far this year. I don't think you can go wrong with Santander. Schwarber, you don't know. Teoscar is the best batting average. I actually go with Teoscar second because he's got a high floor, 271 batting average. He also steals a bit. He's got 79 homers. Santander over Teoscar because the Orioles are in a big playoff race. They're trying to get back, and they're now actually out of first. The Yankees just passed them. But Teoscar, he could be sat down the stretch. I can see some playing time just, being a little bit removed, especially Schwarber also if the Phillies clinch early. So I'd say Santander is my winner. Anything else to add to those? I think that was a good discussion. Everybody else had a different take.
You mentioned about Schwarber not being the prototypical leadoff guy. He gets on base so often. He has 5 stolen bases this year. He's attempted 8 stolen bases. So it's not like he doesn't run. He does steal the occasional base. It's not a normal, typical 35, 40 stolen base leadoff guy, but he still steals bases. And I don't think, how could the Dodgers sit Teoscar if he's still hitting? I mean, yes, you want to get him some rest. He's not the youngest guy in the lineup. You want to get him some rest, but how can you sit him? And same thing with Santander. He's not going to lose any playing time either, even with all their prospects on the team because of the way he's playing.
But is Teoscar DHing? Because you got Mr. Otani there.
No, Teoscar's not going to DH. They're going to have to play him in the outfield, so they can.
They might sit him a little bit.
But I mean, the way he's hitting, how can you sit him? I mean, if you want your best lineup out there, he should not be on your bench. That's just plain and simple.
The Dodgers don't have that big a lead in their division anymore. I think the Phillies are more likely to be resting players at the end of the year than the Dodgers, I believe.
True. I will.
Yeah,
I will
and also Schwarber DHs a lot he'll DH a lot down the stretch just to get batting, some at bats in there also. So they're not going to sit him completely. They may give him some time off, yes, but sitting him, I don't think I think he needs to keep swinging to keep that swing going.
All right, these are great. Let's do another outfield discussion. Taylor Ward, Brandon Nimmo, Ian Happ. They're all really close projected. Ian Happ has the highest value to date at $19, the highest earned to date. Nimmo 17, Taylor Ward with 9, but Ward was so hot in the first 2 months. Does he get any of the magic bat? Matt, what say you?
Yeah, these are all pretty close too. I'm going to go with Ian Happ here, just because I have the fewest concerns about him. He's actually hitting the ball a little harder this year than he ever has, although his strikeout rate's up. He's just, he's probably, when you sometimes hear people talk about boring players in fantasy. I think Ian Happ would be that kind of guy, but he's consistent. Like, he's going to hit you 20 homers and 15 steals just about every year. It's not the greatest team, but there's no reason why they're not going to. There's no reason why he's not going to keep playing every day. Taylor Ward, Taylor Ward was the guy I had ranked ahead of the other two at the beginning of the year, and he did get off to an encouraging start. But I don't know, he's just not been good at all lately. He's striking out a lot more than he did last year. I still think he's a talented player, and he could turn it around, but it's hard to bet. If I'm gonna take a chance on somebody turning it around, I'd rather them be on a better team that's got more higher aspirations than the Angels do right now, unfortunately. And Brandon Nimmo, I'm a Mets fan. I watch him all the time, and this might be the fact that I'm watching him so much lately might like be a bias against him in my eyes, but he's just really been in a bad slump since the All-Star break. He's to me, Nimmo. I think this expression is sometimes overused, but I think it really applies for Nimmo. He's a better real life player than he is a fantasy player. He's a good defensive player. Throws a lot of walks. Yeah. And even at the All-Star break, the Mets, the announcers were kind of complaining that he didn't make the All-Star team. And I understand he had a good first half, but even he was still hitting under 250, I think. And
he's batting 227 on the year, which is
and
for
he's
him really bad.
He's running more than he has in the last few years, but still doesn't run much. I feel he's somebody that I always I'm not the only one that feels this way, I'm sure, but like I always felt like if he wanted to, he could steal 20 bases a year, but he just has never done that for whatever reason. Nimmo is just he's more of a 15 team deep kind of league outfielder now. I don't think he's anybody you need to go out and try to get.
Yep. I'm going to agree with your analysis. I don't have much to add. I think Ian Happ is definitely the more stable guy, and I think he's the best projected. He's got 20 homers to date and 8 stolen bases, 66 runs, 67 RBIs. His batting average is not great at 230, but it's just a lot of stats across the board, and he's the least cold. He's not hot right now, but he's the least cold of all of them. Any disagreement, Ruben?
No, I do agree. I think Ian Happ is the guy here. Even though he's cold, he's still hitting home runs. The other guys, both of them, their power is down. Now, with Brandon Nimmo, he actually said that he knows now that the pitchers are pitching him differently. He said the pitchers are pitching him more like a power hitter as opposed to a slashing hitter, and he himself said he has to figure it out. He's batting 145 in the last 22 games, one for his last 16, and his last home run was July 10th, before the All-Star game. So, he's in a big-time slump. He has to figure it out because they're going to keep pitching him the way they're pitching him now and next year. He's got to figure it out. There's something they're pitching him slightly different, and he just hasn't figured it out yet. Which is why for the rest of the season, I think Ian Happ is the safest of the three.
All right, lightning round on the last group of outfielders. Lightning round here. So just give us quickly your favorite and your least favorite. Christopher Morel, Giancarlo Stanton, Jorge Soler, Brian De La Cruz. Matt?
So I was gonna go with Soler until I found out he hurt his hamstring. It doesn't seem like it's gonna be too serious. He didn't play today. He's not on the IL yet. So that will send me. I guess that will by default send me to Giancarlo Stanton as my top from this list. He's obviously a major health risk. He's extremely injury prone, but he's got more. As much power as just about anybody in the game, and he's got two of the best hitters in the world hitting in front of him. So if he's playing, he should be productive. Least as far as the least favorite, I would probably go. I would probably go Brian De La Cruz as last in that group. He doesn't have as much of a track record, and he does not. Last time I checked, he did not have an extra base hit yet since joining the Pirates in 11 games. So, he's a little struggling, and he's a pretty good player. But I think I would rather go with Stanton if he stays healthy. Could have a huge last 6 weeks of the year.
Yeah, Soler was going to be my top guy. And by the way, when we were working out our trade negotiation, you were like, "How about Pham or Soler?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you know what? I prefer Soler. I'll do it for either." Well, I guess if he's injured, then good I didn't take Soler. But let's see what happens. All right, Ruvain, quickly, who's your favorite and least favorite?
Most favorite at this point is Stanton. I think he is playing like himself since he came back from the IL. Soler has 4 home runs since his trade, so if he can stay healthy, he'll be my second. I think Brian De La Cruz will be my third here. He hasn't hit well since the trade, but he's in a better ballpark, PNC, as opposed to in Miami. And Christopher Morel, I think if any team's going to figure out what's wrong with him, I think it's the Rays. So I think it's a good spot for him to be in, but not for this year.
All right, I'm going to agree Stanton is the best today, is the best going forward, and I'll go Brian De La Cruz, the least. Morel just has the power speed blend. I know he's batting $190, but that's got to be that's got to be correctable. He's not a 190 hitter. So let's go from there. All those guys, very similar profile, by the way. All about 20 home run hitters, a couple of steals other than Stanton, middling RBIs. All need fixes. But there you go. All right, great round of Who'd You Rather. But we'll do a little bit more fantasy baseball and give you our waiver wire picks. Let's start with you, Matt. Who is a waiver guy you'd pick up this week?
Okay, so I guess we're starting with batters here. I guess, obviously there's a wide variety of what kind of leagues you play in and who's going to be available. But the first one I'm going to go with is somebody who's probably not available in that many leagues. But if you play in like an NFBC league with no IL spots, he might be. Kerry Carpenter just returned from the IL, and he was out for quite a while but he was hitting really well beforehand, and his first 2 games he had 3 home runs combined over those 2 games. So he's a pretty good hitting outfielder. It's not often that if somebody dropped him in your league, I would definitely suggest picking him up. The only caveat for him would be he doesn't play much against lefties at all, and I believe I looked at the Tigers' upcoming schedule. Next week they do face quite a few lefties, so next week probably won't be his best, but he's somebody who could give you better production than you might usually get from a waiver wire pick this time of year. I think would be Kerry Carpenter.
I think I own him as a percentage of leagues, one of the highest guys. I think I have him on almost every single team. And I actually got him in a couple lineups in the NFBC this week. But yeah, it was fun. I was reading the New York Post, and talking about the game recaps. Like, Matt Carpenter returned to the Tigers and hit 2 home runs. I'm thinking, Matt Carpenter, he's back in baseball? What the hell? It was an obvious mistake. It was Kerry Carpenter.
Yeah.
But that's definitely a good one. I didn't have him on my list because I own him already. So
and if you're looking for a much deeper kind of like somebody who's much more likely to be available, just a guy to go for. I don't have I don't think this guy is certainly not a superstar, but he's playing a lot. His name is Jonah Bride. He's playing for the Marlins. I just basically sorted every major league player based on plate appearances in August, and he was the only guy in the top 15 that was likely to be available. He's not a great player, but he's off to a good start from Miami, and there's no reason for them. If he keeps hitting, they're going to keep playing him. What else are they going to do, right? And he's next week. He's a right-handed hitter. The Marlins looks like they have a bunch of lefties on their schedule next week, so he might be able to keep this up for a little while. Again, lower your expectations. But if you have a dead spot, desperate in need of somebody to fill a spot. I think he's better than a warm body. He wasn't putting up huge numbers in AAA, but he did have more walks and strikeouts, which is always a good thing. So Jonah Bride, somebody who could he's more of somebody who could fill in a spot where if you lost somebody due to injury. I think he'd be a good guy. Sounds
good.
And I had a third guy who I'm kind of more or less bring him up as an excuse to rant a little bit, but that's Tommy Edman, who's I think is also about to return. I ended up, for reasons that I don't quite understand, I ended up with him on a lot of teams this year, and his season has just been really weird. Obviously he hasn't played yet, and the something is, I don't know, something clearly went very wrong for him on his rehab from his wrist surgery. But nobody really seems to know what it is, and the team has been kind of tight-lipped about it. I remember they announced about 2 weeks before the season started that he was doubtful to start the season, which kind of implies, well, okay, he'll probably be back a few weeks after that. But you just kept getting these updates where he was just making the glacial progress in healing from this. So he's a good player. Obviously, it's a concern. A wrist is not something you want to play around with, but he's gonna be joining the Dodgers and probably playing a lot there. A great lineup. If he's healthy, I think he's somebody that's worth a shot if he's available in your league.
All right, Ruvain, who's your waiver wire picks for this week?
Well, you actually stole my Jonah Bride there. He's only 4% owned in CBS. He has 13 games at first base, 11 games at third base, and since July 13th, he rose his batting average has gone up from 182 to 265 with 4 homers and 13 RBIs in that span. He's playing every day, even though he's a lefty. He's playing every day, so he's a guy to look at. But I'm going to mention also 2 relievers that I think if you're looking for saves, these guys can vulture saves for you. The first guy is Justin Martinez of the Diamondbacks. He has 3 saves over the last 2 weeks, and the Diamondbacks are hot. He's got a 1.89 ERA and a 1.2 whip for the year, 62 strikeouts and 53 innings. He's 44% owned in CBS, so this may be your last chance to get him because he seems to be almost solidifying. I mean, the manager of the Diamondbacks, Torey Lovullo, he hasn't said that Martinez is the guy, but they're leaning that way. So just if he's available, I think this is the last time you can get him. And another guy I want to mention, Sir Anthony Dominguez from Baltimore. He's got 2 saves this week. With the way Craig Kimbrell's pitching, I think they may be going by bullpen committee, by whoever they think is going to get do the best that time. And Yennier Cano has gotten some saves, but Sir Anthony Dominguez, since he's been traded, he's only given up 2 hits and 1 run for the Orioles. So that's crazy. And that's over 7 outings. So he's pitching really well. He's only 8% owned in CBS. And if you need a guy who can vulture saves, and if you have Craig Kimbrell, he may be a good handcuff to get this late in the season.
All right, I'm going to give you a bunch of names. I won't talk about a lot of them in detail, but Jordan Walker's back. That's interesting. It's a dart. I'm never a fan, but you never know. Junior Caminero is up. If he's available in your league, that's something that you might want to play. Joe Adell, he's finally doing something. He looks good recently. He's hitting for power. Not the number one prospect. Oh, my God, you can't miss Joe Adell like he was meant to be, but he's actually doing well. I'm playing him in all my 15-team leagues and a couple of 12s. He's been great. I'll say that Brendan Rodgers at a middle infield position in deeper leagues is now interesting. Gavin Lux, I know we were back and forth. Maybe, yes. We'll see how it interacts with Tommy Edman for the moment he's hitting. 2 guys, though, I do want to focus on. Andrew McCutchen, he is under-owned. He's only owned 10% of CBS leagues. I think for a 15-team mix, I know he's utility only, but 16 homers, 235 batting average, 60 runs, that plays. And the guy that I think is the most interesting, Jake Cave. He's with the Rockies. He's looking good, and there's a lot of home games he has coming up. He's only 1% owned on CBS. This is a no-brainer in a 15-team league. In his 240 at-bats for the year, 6 homers, 5 steals, batting .260. Got 10 doubles and 4 triples. Take a good hard look at Jake Cave. I think he can give you a little bit of oomph. Maybe even in some shallow mono leagues as well, it could be available. So
yeah, Jake Cave is actually somebody who I consider for my list as well. I actually ended up not mentioning him because the Rockies are, I think, on the road all next week, and they face a bunch of lefties, so he's probably not going to be that helpful to you immediately. But yeah, I don't quite understand why somebody who's playing just about every day for the Rockies has such a low rostership percentage. That really needs to be higher. I have him on several teams, and he's not a star, but he's when the Rockies are home. And this, as long as they're not facing all lefties, he's probably better than your fifth outfielder on most.
You could do a lot worse by having him in the NFBC in the half week on your bench. I mean, it's an instant pickup.
I think I have him in one draft champions league, and I think only he was only drafted, and these are huge leagues. They 50-round picks, 15 teams, and I think he was only even drafted in 4% of all the leagues of that. So I think he was traded to the Rockies very late in spring training, so that's probably why nobody was interested in him before then, but it's still amazing how available he is.
All right, Matt, let's do the pitcher preview. Who's a pitcher that you're interested for this coming week, or maybe even late in the year to do a future 2-star pitcher or something?
Yeah, so I struggled a little bit more with this one, but I don't know, this guy may or may not be available in too many leagues, but DJ Hers looks pretty interesting to me. He is only one of 8 pitchers this season who have multiple games with 10 or more strikeouts and no walks, and he's the youngest of those 8. He's been quite inconsistent. I have him on a couple of teams, and I think he. If I'm not mistaken, his last outing was not very good. But, I like to see the seal. He obviously has a high ceiling, and if you're in a situation where you're trying to protect a lead, he's probably not your ideal guy. But if you're looking to find lightning in a bottle, somebody who could come out of nowhere and give you a bunch of really good starts. And of course, the flip side is they could be pretty bad too. But I think he's if you're looking to roll the dice and try to come up with somebody who could provide has quite a bit of upside as DJ Hers for the Nationals. Couple others. This one is more of a focus on next week specifically, not necessarily for the rest of the season. But Kyle Harrison of the Giants appears to be lined up for a 2-start week at home against the White Sox and at Seattle. Yeah. He's got his last 4 starts, 24 strikeouts, 5 walks. His overall numbers, even in those games, is not great. I think he's given up 6 home runs in those 4 starts, which is obviously not good. But facing the White Sox and Mariners, there are probably not too many guys who can take advantage of that. So I think Kyle Harrison would be a good short-term pickup, and maybe he's not a terrible pitcher. Maybe if he does well, you might want to hold on to him. But
what's the level pitcher, by the way, that you would say, okay, this pitcher is facing the White Sox this week, and I'm not gonna start him. How bad does it have to get?
Patrick Corbin?
Any, even Patrick Corbin you play. Yeah,
Patrick Corbin, I'm starting against the White Sox. I think
I
so.
think I think I think anybody. I think literally anybody.
I mean, Detroit has Montero and Salmons going against the White Sox. Anybody pitching those guys in a 15-team league? Well,
Hey,
I wouldn't give up a roster spot for those, but if I somehow magically had them, I'd probably start them.
In DFS, maybe. In daily, why not? Why not? Give it a roll. Why
And
not?
daily, yeah, daily for sure. Yeah, I mean, you have to. It's just an interesting theoretical question. Like, how bad does it have to get not to pitch against the White Sox? I mean, you can start anybody, right?
Right. Well, I actually have another Chicago player as one of my pitchers, and that's Javier Assad. He's 47% owned in CBS right now, so he's probably not available in a lot of your leagues. But in his last three starts, he's got a 2.84 ERA, only 12 and two-thirds innings, but he's being stretched out since he came back from the injured list. Only 6 strikeouts, but he's lined up right now to face Detroit and at Miami. So I like those two starts. And another guy who may be available in your league, and this is Mitchell Parker of the Nationals. He's one start this week against Colorado at home, which means he's playing in Washington, not in Colorado. And so far, recently, he's gone 1-0 with a 1.04 ERA in his last 17 innings. Not that many strikeouts, but he's because you're playing Colorado and you're not in Colorado. I'll take my chances with that guy.
So I'll throw a couple of guys. Tyler Mahle. I've been mentioning him a couple of weeks, but take that dart. I mean, he's upside. If you're looking for upside, that's the guy. Eduardo Rodriguez is back. That's another dart. He's at Miami this week, and then he's two-start against the Mets and the Dodgers. I think he's interesting. He's a good quality pitcher. There aren't that many quality ones left on the wire. You mentioned Assad. I had him as a consideration as well. Matthew Boyd is back. He's playing the Yankees and Texas this week, and then he'll be against the Pirates. You never know. Jose Quintana versus Baltimore, and then at San Diego, and then the following week he's at Chicago White Sox. Now, you probably want to pitch him in the two-start, but even if you don't, because Baltimore's a good team, pick him up, and then you'll have a start against the White Sox. How can you not pitch Quintana against the White Sox, right? And I'll throw in Martin Perez, two-start Minnesota and the Mets. That's interesting. Anything else, boys, to add?
I think we covered a good portion of the pitchers. I think
A lot
we're
of
good.
options.
Yes.
All right. The only thing left to do is injury update, Ruvain. All right. What is the injury assessment you have for middle of August?
Okay, well, I'm going to mention a whole bunch of pitchers here and when they're coming back so you can try to make some informed decisions for your roster. Max Scherzer is on the IL with right shoulder fatigue. He's going to have an MRI done. He hasn't progressed well. They send him back to Dallas for further evaluation. There's no timetable for his return. You don't know how much you're going to get from him the rest of the year. Grayson Rodriguez, a right lat strain. Orioles general manager Mike Elias said this week that Rodriguez will be shut down for throwing for the next 10 days, and they hope to have him back sometime in September. Justin Verlander may need only one more start and may be activated. The start should be this weekend and may be activated for this coming week. Reynaldo Lopez is on the IL with right forearm inflammation. He may be activated this weekend. Ranger Suarez, he already threw a sim game and he could be activated around August 24th. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, he's on the IL with the right rotator cuff strain. He threw to live hitters this week. He still needs multiple rehab assignments to be activated, maybe sometime in December. Luis Garcia, he's a long shot to return this year. He's still coming back from Tommy John surgery, so if you have any shares of him, I think you may drop him. Jared Jones, he's on a rehab assignment right now for the lat strain. He can return as early as this coming week. Reese Olson is continuing to rehab from a right shoulder strain. He's throwing from distance and on flat ground, but there's still no timetable for his return. Ben Brown of the Cubs, he was shut down from throwing for the time being. That's what Craig Counsell said, so we don't know whether or not he's going to come back or not. Lance Lynn, he has a knee strain. He's going to throw another bullpen this week. He still will require at least another rehab start before that happens. River Ryan, Tommy John surgery, done for the year. James Paxton, a calf strain, partial tear of the right calf. He is probably done for the year. Clark Schmidt, coming back from a lat injury. He's supposed to start a rehab assignment August 22nd. So if he's available, you may be able to get him now, if that's possible. Casey Mize, he's doing a couple rehab starts for the Tigers. He should be back by August 30th. Liam Hendricks, blast from the past here. Liam Hendricks is supposed to start a rehab assignment this week, so it's possible if you want to get him, if you want to take a risk, maybe he'll close some games instead of Kenley Jansen. That's a possibility. And I listed all those pitchers, but I have to end with this. Byron Buxton was placed on the IL this week with right hip soreness.
No way.
There's no structural damage in his right hip, but they wanted to be cautious. So now Manuel Margot, and Austin Martin may get some more playing time. The soonest Byron Buxton to return is August 23rd, but it is Byron Buxton.
That's all you got to say, Byron Buxton. Well, we could have probably assumed. You should have started the injury update with, "Hey, is Byron Buxton on the IL?" Guess what? There he goes. Unbelievable. Well, I wish you speedy health, Byron. Get back on the field again as quickly as you can. I mean it. I do want to see you on the field. I just, as a fantasy analyst, just low probability that you'll make it the whole year. And that's okay to say. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, part 1 of our conversation with Matt Martingale of the Elias Sports Bureau. We'll be back next week for part 2 with our 1980s New York Mets discussion. From all of us here at Beat the Shift, we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Beat the Shift podcast presented by Fangraphs. Follow us on Twitter at beat_shift_pod.